Welcome inside this edition of Big Ten Today. I'm your host, Rick Pizzo, and we begin today with developing news as the NCAA has officially released its findings from its investigation into the Michigan football program and improprieties committed during its national championship season of 2023. Head coach Sherrone Moore, then an assistant, has been given a 3-game suspension, 2 to be served this year. They were self-imposed, 1 in 2026. Show cause penalties levied upon Jim Harbaugh, Connor Stalions, Denard Robinson, and more. Harbaugh basically banned from college coaching for the next decade. We'll get into what this means for Sherrone Moore in just a bit. Michigan also placed on 4 years of probation, fined $50,000 plus 10% of the football program budget, in addition to the equivalent of loss of postseason revenue for the next 2 seasons. No concrete numbers, but expected to be one of, if not the biggest financial fine ever issued by the NCAA. There's also a 25% reduction in official recruiting visits for the 25-26 season, and over the course of the next 4 years, a 14-week prohibition on recruiting communication. To help us make sense of it all, welcome in our good friend, Bruce Feldman. Bruce, this report is 74 pages long. So much information, but at the end of the day, no vacation of wins or championships for Michigan, no future postseason bans. How does the severity of this punishment match up with what you expected from the NCAA?
You know, Rick, I think it comes back to this. The NCAA can't punish, isn't going to punish the players at Michigan. And I think the vacated wins, it felt like it was like the NCAA, like most NCAA kind of punishment ever, because you can't really, you can do stuff like that, but at the end of the day, the games still happen, right? And you had the NCAA president, Charlie Baker, after he got the job, basically after Michigan wins the title, saying they won it fair and square. We saw them beat Washington. We also saw Michigan win games without Jim Harbaugh when he was suspended that season. So I think on that front, it didn't feel like it was ever going to be on the table. The most damning thing that they could do is do a heavy financial punishment for Michigan, but also, you have the show causes. But let's be honest, Jim Harbaugh won his national title. He is happy in the NFL, and he's not coming back. I don't think Connor Stalions was ever going to be an option for somebody to hire in college football. So it's like, who can we punish? Sherrone Moore. That's about it. And again, he's due to sit out a couple of games this season, and the additional one they put on them next season. But I think the NCAA looked at this, and quite honestly, everybody else did, and go, look, it's time to wrap this up and move on.
The Sherrone Moore show cause penalty is interesting because it's rare to see a sitting coach get a show cause. Bruce, let's clarify this. It really doesn't in any way affect his role in Ann Arbor, does it?
It doesn't. It's really more about who can. It feels more like almost like a probation, to be honest, because the show cause issue is it's set up to basically make somebody unhireable if they don't have a job. Sherrone Moore has the job. He's already working there. And I think in a lot of ways to people, they saw Sherrone Moore actually be the acting head coach in the games Jim Harbaugh was suspended when they won the national title. And those were big. Some of those were huge games. So I think going forward, it's the financial punishment that is the heaviest thing that the NCAA hit on Michigan. Obviously, it's not great to have Sherrone Moore not be coaching a game as the head coach, but that's the punishment that's come with it. And again, the NCAA said that it called him out as well, that they were not cooperative with the process, as obviously Jim Harbaugh. They also mentioned Denard Robinson and obviously Stalions. So I think those are things that are definitely, they're wagging their finger at Michigan and some of those individuals. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's like this devastating punishment to Sherrone Moore.
Bruce, I do want to touch on the financial aspect. There's not a concrete number in there because it is percentage of budget and other things that are to be determined. But in today's day and age of college football, where money at some universities seems endless, how much does this actually impact the athletic department of Michigan and the football team specifically?
I think it's a ding, but at the same point, I don't think it's like a devastating blow. This is Michigan. Michigan has more money than almost anybody when it comes to operating at a high level as a college athletic department. I don't think this is like crippling by any means. Especially when you're talking about how huge the Michigan endowment is related to what this punishment is probably going to be. So, I don't know how much the NCAA could really hammer Michigan. I think the best thing, if you're somebody who really took issue with everything and said, oh, this is the only reason why they were winning, then it's like, you can believe however you want to believe. I think just because of the Charlie Baker statement coming out of it, again, this is the head of the NCAA to say what he did after Michigan won the title. I think they were a little bit handcuffed on just how hard they can come down on them. And again, this has been a few years in the making, and they were punishing Michigan as it was going on.
Bruce, I know this is your focus today, but I want to transition to an assignment that you take on now annually, and one that's a little bit more lighthearted. It's your annual Freaks List, where you look at the biggest athletic freaks, and we mean that in a good way, in all of college football. 21 Big Ten players among your list of 100, including 5 inside the top 10, and the number 1 freak in the country. No surprise, it's Ohio State wide receiver Jeremiah Smith. And Bruce, as you pointed out, perhaps the most amazing thing about Smith, as hard to believe as this is, he won't even turn 20 until after Thanksgiving of his sophomore season.
Yeah, I mean, he came in with huge hype, and he was as advertised, if not more. Even the Ohio State coaches were really wowed by the stuff he could do. He came in a little early. He graduated high school early, and they're talking about a guy you've had all these elite receivers that Ohio State has developed in the last decade or so, and this guy is the most talented. I don't even think it's close. You're talking about a guy who runs 23.5 miles per hour, broad jumps 11 feet. He's 6'3.5". He's almost 225 pounds. Like, he's bigger, stronger, and faster than all of them. And when I had talked to him a few weeks back, I said, what's the thing you're most proud of? And he said, it's probably my strength. He came in, he bench pressed 2 1/4 5 times, which is not bad for a receiver, especially one right out of high school. Now that's 20 times. So he went from doing it 5 times to 20 times in a little over a year. That's pretty amazing development, and I think he's just scratching the surface on how great he's going to be.
Now, he's not a surprise, but the guy at number 4, Amari Washington from Oregon, is a little bit of a surprise because he wasn't very productive last year, right? Just 10 tackles. Of course, he was playing alongside and behind NFL draft picks as well. Why is he so high up on your list?
You're talking about a guy who's almost 340 pounds, whose GPS numbers, he runs almost 21 miles per hour. To have that kind of acceleration is crazy for a guy that's impressive if he's 240 pounds, much less 340 pounds. He vertical jumps 36 inches. I mean, when I saw those numbers, I did like a triple take. And then when I talked to Dan Lanning, he was like, this guy is really athletically special. And now we need to see more of it translate on the field. As you mentioned, you lose a first-round defensive lineman. Jamari Caldwell was another high-level interior D lineman. Both those guys are in the NFL now. I can't wait to see what he does, because the coaches there have told me they feel like he's ready to take the next big step. And honestly, we know they have good guys on the outside of that defensive line. Now it's having a real disruptive, dominant presence, and he definitely has the talent to be that.
Of course, the Buckeyes and Ducks once again head into the year as Big Ten championship contenders, but most believe they're trailing Penn State in that regard, and Penn State once again has a defensive freak. A year ago, Abdul Carter stole the show. How good could Zane Durant be in this defense this year with Jim Knowles calling the shots?
Yeah, that's going to be exciting to see. Jim Knowles, terrific defensive coordinator. I had 5 guys from Penn State on the freaks list. That was the most of any program. James Franklin and his staff have just cranked out these kind of elite athletes, and people can, scratch their head on some of that, but these guys put up insane numbers in the testing program, and then all of a sudden they go to the combine and they match him or exceed him. Durant was a little bit of an undersized interior defensive lineman, super explosive. I mean, he's in the mold of Aaron Donald, a guy who ran 4.66 at around 290 pounds. I mean, that is crazy fast for being a defensive tackle. And he's very disruptive. I mean, I saw Nick Dawkins, their terrific center, a few weeks ago, and I asked him, who's the best defensive lineman you faced? And he's faced guys who are first-round picks. And he said, hands down, it's easy. It's this guy. And he came out of Florida. He was not a huge recruit. And I think when you see what he has been able to do last year, and then as you mentioned, now you got Jim Knowles running the defense, I think there's going to be a lot for offenses to have to worry about, not just where other guys are coming from, but you can't really single block this guy.
Aaron Donald, that's a pretty good comparison. Of course, there's no comparison to the information that Bruce Feldman can share. Bruce, as always, we appreciate the time.
My pleasure. Thanks, Rick.
Our Big Ten Network training camp tour finds itself just north of our Chicago studios on the campus of Northwestern, where David Braun and the Cats look to bounce back after a disappointing 2024. Dave Revson anchors our coverage from Evanston.
Rick, thanks. Here with Jake Butt. Interesting practice here today watching Northwestern. There were some points of emphasis clearly from the offseason, things that they focused on in the transfer portal. And I think first and foremost, they knew they had to get better quarterback play. I mean, this is a team that literally did not score an offensive touchdown in 4 different games last year. They went out and got Preston Stone from SMU, and I know you were really impressed.
Having a good quarterback helps you to score touchdowns.
It does.
That is my bold
direct correlation
and hot take of the day. So I do believe that there's not a team in the Big Ten that upgraded more at the quarterback position than Northwestern. I mean, Preston Stone, when you go back and watch his film from the past, there's a ton to be excited about. An area Northwestern has struggled is in explosive plays. That's where Preston has been most comfortable, pushing the ball downfield, and we saw some of that out practice. There's not a throw that he wants to make that he can't make. There's not a play that Coach Lujan wants to call up that Preston is incapable of executing. But again, it's the pieces around him here. Another piece is, last year when I was calling some Northwestern games, Coach Braun was really, forthright with us. He said, it doesn't matter anything we do unless the offensive line is addressed and improved. And I think we would both agree, just from a body type, it much better. It feels closer to a Big Ten offensive line. They have depth and competition. They bring in some key guys. Will D as a wide receiver who's had an extremely productive career. That seemed to be Preston Stone's go-to guy. So there's all these pieces. But it really matters what it looks like when they take the field on Saturdays this fall. But certainly you can see the bones and the shell of some clear offensive progress.
Well, part of it is they had the ability to utilize the portal, which they hadn't had as much here recently. It's been a little bit of a challenge to get into it. They had 16 portal additions over the previous 3 years combined. They have 15 this year in 1 year. And they're players who have been productive at previous spots. You mentioned Griffin Wilde, obviously Preston Stone, a number of players defensively, Dylan Tatum, Yanni Karlaftis. These are guys who started in the Big Ten. So you feel like they've been able to utilize that a little bit more and reinforce their roster. It's just you can't be a purely developmental program in this day and age, no matter how much you want to be.
But there's a little ping pong effect here, which is, Coach Braun says, man, we have to get back on track. Last year wasn't good enough. They want to be closer to year one. So he addressed the deficiencies in the roster. So then can you capitalize on it and can you get to a bowl game, if not more this year? That's going to help recruiting. It's a circular thing. And I will say, talking to Preston during the interview today, football's a team sport. I need to trust the guys next to me. I need to trust that you're going to do your job. I want to care about you as a person. And Preston said that Coach Braun sat him down with the leaders of the team and had the players sell him on the locker room. And that was a big reason he came. David Braun said that this is a player-led team in a locker room. Those are small little indications that may seem insignificant at the time, but when they're in a dogfight in close games, which they will be a number of times this fall, the fact that they're going to be able to trust one another and they play hard for one another and they trust their coaches can only be beneficial to the result of the games.
And Preston Stone has said it a few times publicly on our air. In fact, I think he said it with you as well today, where he said, hey, the team that I was at last year, which, oh, by the way, he doesn't say this, but they made the college football playoff in SMU. He said, this is the team at Northwestern that you need to try to keep up with in terms of the work ethic. He's been very complimentary of how hard guys work here, how much they want to win. He is clearly an upgrade. I think the challenge is you look at the wide receiver spot, like Bryce Kurtz was a really good Big Ten wide receiver. He won them a game against Minnesota 2 years ago, right, which was a coming out party really for Ben Bryant. He had a huge game. A.J. Henning is a proven Big Ten wide receiver. Griffin Wilde came in from South Dakota State. He's clearly going to be the number one target. I think the issue is who are the targets after that?
Yeah, maybe I'd even throw in some of the tight ends today. I mean, they got 9 guys on the roster, and Coach Lujan is going to use it's a multiple diverse attacking of personnel. So I don't think it's going to be one singular guy. I mean, they're going to have to rely on a number of guys. Football's a game of matchups. I'd even throw in the running backs. If you want to talk about explosive play potential, they got a few backs that have the chance to score from anywhere on the field. And of course, they're excited about the offensive line. So again, yes, Preston Stone, he's taken the stride. I like the starting unit. When they rolled out their starting unit today, I said, okay, like this team could be competitive and they can win some games. Health will be another big factor there. Yeah.
Right, particularly at that wide receiver spot, it feels like. And you've got some younger guys who have had injury issues, frankly, early on in their career. So you hope that they stay healthy. What about the defensive side of the ball? This is historically, kind of recent history, this has been the strength for Northwestern, certainly in the Pat Fitzgerald era as it went on. They relied very heavily on their defense. It dropped off a little bit his last couple of years, but it feels like it's trending again back in the right direction here. The defensive line, I know, stood out to you. It stood out to me as well. They feel like they have big-time playmakers. Anto Saka is being mentioned as a potential first-round pick. They love Michael Kilbane. It feels like that group up front gives them a chance.
You know, I think that's probably one of the big separators here in the conference. Like when you go to Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, you see NFL bodies in a clear dominance of trench play. Well, we talked about the offensive line taking a stride. The defensive line now, especially with some of the guys coming back and some guys getting healthy, is poised to be a top half, if not even more, group in the Big Ten. And when I think about Northwestern's defense, they remind me of Iowa. It's not a ton of exotic pressures. It's not a ton of exotic looks. It's still those team personnels where all 11 guys do their job well and trust the guy next to him to do his job. They do not give up explosive plays. So I think the defensive line right there will be the force that drives the defense as a whole. They're going to have to improve in terms of stopping the run. That includes the linebackers. And then when they get offenses into third and long and obvious passing situations, it's an area they struggled last year. Can they be more disruptive with sacks and turnovers?
You mentioned needing to be better against the run. That was the area where it felt like it dropped off last year, like early in the year. And again, part of it is the opponents who you're playing in the non-conference. I get that. But early in the year, they were really limiting teams. In fact, no one who they beat ran for more than 60 yards on them. But as the year went on, it seemed like they wore down. It feels like they could rotate more guys through in that front 7 maybe than they could a year ago, and that'll help them hold up. The schedule is not easy. I mean, let's start with the first game. You go down to Tulane, you play a team that's been one of the best non-power conference teams in the country. You have to play them in swampy New Orleans in late August. Midday. That's a challenging game. They play 2 playoff teams from last year in Oregon and Penn State. It's not an easy schedule, Jake, but they're going to have to be up to the challenge right away. And you feel like if you look at like where are their possibilities for wins, the front end of the schedule is friendlier than the back end.
That Tulane game is critical. I mean, it's going to reveal a lot about this team. I mean, I think the players and the coaches are excited about their potential, and the chance to win that game can then set the tone for some of the challenging but winnable games on their schedule. And I think what benefits Northwestern in a week 1 game, there's no film. You don't really know who you are or what to expect. But as I've spoken about the defense, which is very simple schemes and about execution, that'll benefit them in a week 1 game. They don't need a long time to get deep in their playbook. Preston Stone, a guy with experience and that they're excited about, what a great opportunity to go out there and introduce himself to this roster into the Big Ten Conference. Winning that game will set the tone for the rest of the season.
Very, very intriguing team here, but a lot of fun to spend our day with the Wildcats. For now, let's send it back to Rick in the studio.
Gents, thanks. The West Coast portion of our tour kicks off tonight from Eugene. Ashley Adamson, Yogi Roth deliver interviews, insight, and analysis after watching Oregon practice. It all comes your way Friday at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, with multiple airings throughout the evening. Thursday marked opening night for Big Ten women's soccer as nearly the entire conference made its way to the pitch. Update you on scores, including a top 6 takedown for Iowa when Big Ten Today returns. Time for us to take you around the Big Ten. 17 of 18 women's soccer teams in action on opening night of the season, including a pair of top 15 matchups. The biggest win of the night goes to the Iowa Hawkeyes as the Hawks knocked off number 6 Arkansas on the road. Overall, the Big Ten with 12 wins, 2 losses, and 3 draws on the evening. We already saw Nebraska volleyball play its red-white scrimmage. Coming up this weekend, it's the alumni scrimmage. This is not like an old-timers game. Recent alumni, many still playing pro volleyball, will be featured this coming weekend. It's another chance for the preseason number 1 to see what it takes to be the best.
Yeah, the depth is pretty amazing. Our practices are really tough. You know, that's just going to make us stronger in the end. That's why I'm very excited to play against somebody else, even if it's alum this weekend, to really see how our 8 players can perform together, 7 or 8, without playing against each other. Because it's very hard to tell how good we are, how good one individual is, because the line is so thin between maybe our top outside and our 4th outside. I mean, it's like razor thin. So against somebody else, we'll get to use that depth, get creative with our lineups, and I think that's just so important when you're talking about the longevity of a season and being our best in December. Wear and tear, team morale, all that's really important to have a deep team.
And that'll do it for this edition of Big Ten Today. For everyone here at the Big Ten Network, I'm Rick Pizzo. Hope you and yours have a terrific weekend, and we hope to see you again. Do this again on Monday at noon Eastern Time.